Hi, I'm Steve Heyes, and I would like to just say a few comments in celebration of the first conference of what will soon be the Russian chapter of the Association for Contextual Behavioral Science. Congratulations, I'm glad that you're here. Probably you're here because you're interested in acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT, or also called acceptance and commitment training when it's used outside of a psychotherapy context, but probably most of you are psychotherapists, very likely psychologists or clinical psychologists, perhaps counselors, social workers, or others. And if I were to guess, more from a cognitive behavior therapy background, which only makes sense because ACT is part of the CBT community writ large. Emerged inside that behavior therapy, cognitive therapy, CBT tradition. And so I just want to say a few things that I think will help orient you towards the journey that you're on as a community and as individuals. ACT is better thought of as a model than as a specific protocol. The psychological flexibility principles are, to my mind, far more important than any particular metaphor or exercise or protocol or book or population or a means of delivery of ACT. When we look at the underlying processes, the psychological flexibility processes, we realize that they do overlap with other perspectives, but they bring something new to the table, and we have perhaps more work on the basic foundation and the mediational data to explain how these processes work. And so because of that, if you're just starting out and you're wondering, what is ACT? How do I learn it? Can I be certified? How does it combine with other things? A lot of those things we've made kind of early decisions on, because ACT is not for any particular mental health problem, certainly not any particular traditional diagnosis or syndrome, and because it's process-oriented. And because also these processes apply so broadly that we even have a name for when they're outside of psychotherapy, but they apply to so many different professions. Not just the professions involved in psychotherapy delivery, but also teachers and business leaders, sports coaches, nurses, occupational therapists, physical therapists, primary care physicians, psychiatry, psychology, social work, counseling, and on it goes. So I want to say early on that what you're involved with here with ACT is not something that is meant to sort of build walls between you and the things you already like, or the things you already do, or the things you already care about. I like thinking of it as a foundation and not as a fence, not as a wall. And so you can usefully combine psychological flexibility principles and techniques that move them with all of the things that science says and your own clinical experience suggests are helpful to the people that you serve. I encourage that. In part for that reason, we don't certify therapists. We think it creates hierarchy that is very difficult then to dismantle. But we do have training programs and online programs and books and so forth to help learn it. We're increasingly developing measures to help know when you're competent at it. And so you can kind of take charge of it in your own way. You can list yourself on the ACBS website when you are ready to be known as a person who does training or delivers therapy. We do have a process of recognizing trainers, but that's not an exclusionary thing. It's really not even a certification. It's meant as a public declaration that you are now willing to be a resource to help others learn. And so it's more of a service designation for people who are at a level of expertise. That's pretty different. That radically transdiagnostic, process-oriented, horizontal, not vertical, humble and organizationally and very careful about creating needless hierarchies. That's pretty different than most of what you see in evidence-based methods, and it's there for a reason. It's because our purpose is so broad and deep that we think it's better to have an open development system that allows the entire community to evolve and change even what ACT is. And it's not just ACT and ACBS. There's the compassion-focused therapy people, the functional analytic therapy people. It's traditional CBT people. It's mindfulness-based therapy people. It's metacognitive therapists, and on it goes. So we celebrate that diversity. And if I could just then say a few things about your chapter and your organization. I've noticed that chapters grow when they find a way to be more open and allow people to come in, when they're less hierarchical, when they're willing to have people come and learn about these processes who maybe are not psychologists or maybe teachers or even people involved in organizations and things of that kind. So I'd encourage you to consider whether or not it fits your tradition and purpose to sort of be that open. I encourage you to explore the depth of the work that's in contextual behavioral science. ACBS is not the Association for ACT, it's the Association for Contextual Behavioral Science, because if you're going to have a vision that of what it is that you want to do that says we're trying to create a behavioral science more adequate to the challenge of the human condition, which is the stated goal of ACBS, then we really need to do work on basic science. We need to do work on philosophy of science. We need to do work on development and on the link of psychological processes to biological processes and how this fits into social and cultural processes. There's so many things to do that it's really important to try to put those elements all there. So that can be a little overwhelming. You may have heard that relational frame theory is very hard to learn, or functional contextualism is hard to understand, and so forth. There's no speedometer glued to your head. You don't have to move at any particular speed. But I do encourage some of you, as you get more comfortable with the ACT work and you see what it does in the lives of the clients that you serve and also with yourself, that you do explore some of the elements of the contextual behavioral science work that go beyond ACT. It'll help your entire community become more grounded in the work, and it'll help your personal exploration. But one step at a time. I don't like putting those things as a barrier and saying you have to understand, RFT, or you can't be an ACT person. That's just not true. But it will develop and amplify your work. So I encourage it. You'll find as you do that there's an international community who's ready to support you. Even as I'm hopefully doing right now with this little video, there's almost 10,000 people in ACBS and 28 chapters in 18 different languages. As soon as you're here, I'll say 19. And that means you should not be shy about reaching out and asking for help by well-known leaders or just by people who you know can be of use to you inside the ACBS community. We've created a culture of giving and of making things openly accessible for free if possible. And so take advantage of that. There's a worldwide community who's ready to help and to move your development in the work that you're learning about here at the conference. I have found with chapters that it's best if early on people learn how to be cooperative, to worry a lot less about which city or way of thinking or university or whatever is in charge or gets to have the officers in a organization and so on. I would encourage you to avoid that. Really be open in your call for members and in your early elections. Set up a a process that's really transparent and fair, and trust that all boats will rise, as we say, when the community itself begins to work together well. So find a way to listen, to share, to cooperate with the people there at the conference, but even others who are not there and who soon will be. And for the final thing I'd like to say is that you really do need to understand that the ACBS community is excited to hear your voice. We want to read your articles. We want to hear your talks, to see your innovations, to examine the data you're able to collect, and to listen about what your experience shows about the use of these various contextual behavioral science methods, including ACT. And so I hope soon to be able to see contributions and articles and talks and so forth coming out of your country. You probably know, I'll mention this early on, that we don't certify therapists because I think it creates hierarchy that you can't get out of. But there is a recognized trainer process. So if some of you get more experienced with doing trainings, be mindful of that. And there's a committee that will help you do this. It costs virtually nothing, and frankly, it's not a credential. It's not there to sort of put a badge on your shirt. What the recognition process does is it is really set up as a kind of a service so that others can find you, and you can help supervise and organize to teach and to support the development of others. So it's an exciting journey that you're on. I hope this conference will excite you with the things that you can learn, and that very soon as you try these methods with your clients, that you'll be lifted up by the results that you see, and that we're now part of a process in which the Russian voice will be heard inside the worldwide contextual behavioral science community. Congratulations on your conference. Have a great conference. Peace, love, and life, my friends.